Hello, Renew Education, and we are looking at another case study here. We want to look at second molars. If you followed some of my other case studies that I've been doing, you know I'm not a fan of second molar implants and replacements, mostly because it doesn't create the value that the patient would expect, meaning they don't understand that that's a secondary chewing position, that they're not going to get 100% of their chew capacity for 100% of the money that's going to cost them to get it. So I like the idea of value. And in a second molar position here or here, they got decay here, and this is a failed root canal. They're not going to get 100% of that value that they would be putting into financially. It's going to have to be 100%. So putting into their teeth. So I always try to educate a patient about that so they know what they're actually buying, because essentially they're buying your service. So let's look at, so I'm calling this if you have to. Now this patient really had this idea in her head about value, but also thought it's 100% value, and two, felt that she just had this idea of she doesn't want to lose her teeth. She just kept going on and on and on. So maybe it's some paranoia going towards denture. I told her she's far from that, but this idea of losing her teeth is just really kind of crazy for her. So she really wants to do implants in the second molar position. So I call this if you have to ... second. So that's why I did that. Let's look at the treatment assessment here. Treatment assessment is pretty much all green except a couple categories. The detached gingiva is in an orange and a yellow IA nerve, only because it's a little bit further down here. But when you look at this, we're coming close. So I don't want to lose any more bone height here, because I don't want to have more of a detached gingiva problem, and I don't want to have a IA nerve problem. So this one is a socket graft case. Let's look closer at the CT, and we can evaluate that one here, and we're going to look at that too. What I like to think of is what happens on the left side typically happens on the right side, or vice versa. Goes for the upper lower, but also the anatomy is very similar between the right side or the left side and vice versa. So if you see split roots or a curved root, you'll see that here. You'll see that here. You'll see these kind of straighter leg kind of roots. You'll see the same kind of straighter leg kind of roots here. You have decay here. You had probably decay here, and then a root canal and a crown. That one has decay or just a crown, which then turns into a root canal, which turns into whatever. So I don't know if this is restorable. We have to cut the crown off to find that out, but we're going to talk about number 18 here. So let's look at that slice view closer up. We luckily have a very steady, or at least still remaining, lingual wall. Usually this is reversed, where the buccal wall is very thin. So we're in luck there. She has decent quality bone. If we look a little bit further up, the bone quality looks good throughout between these other teeth. Maybe not super great. Well, let's see there. It's just not a good angle, but you know, it's not bad. It's definitely workable. So when we go back to this area, this would be about where you're looking at doing a placement. And what we want to do is look at that IA nerve right here, and we want to make sure that we maintain the height of that bone. So you're not going to be doing an immediate placement in this case anyway, but let's say when you graft it, we can get the bone and maintain the bone height like this. So the problem is one, it's a very difficult spot to get to actually do your osteotomy. But secondly, the amount of bone you have before you hit the nerve comes to about 9 millimeters or so, 9.5 millimeters here to that point. So we definitely have to maintain the height in this case. That's the socket graft. And we want to maintain that ridge and its attached gingiva, etc., etc. So Here's where you're looking at an 8 millimeter implant and as wide as you can get it. I know Hyacinth has ultra wide implant diameters. So let's look for a 6. They actually have a 7. And then when you get to 7s, I think Implant Direct has the same thing, and some other implant companies, Keystone, etc., have 7x7. So let's look at a 7x7. Oh, Bicon too, as well. You have to really kind of bury these. So don't think you're going to be placing it in the normal way. You're going to bury them a little bit more than you would normally bury it. So even if it's a 7 millimeter, you're kind of still stuck with getting close to that nerve. So the only way you're going to get this that close typically is with a sinus type drill, one that's not a real straight pointed end cutting drill to get here. I don't like this so much because the sinus drills typically, the sinus lift drills pretty much only go to about a 4 to 4.5. I'm not really sure why. You can try a Bicon drill. I really don't like those drills, but Bicon would be the one that has the wider type of implant stuff. They're made for their implants and they're press fit. So this is a hard one to kind of get to, and the type of drills that you have from Hyacinth in this case have a point. So you're going to be going a lot deeper than you would want with the drill. So you're a little bit in a conundrum here getting that close to the nerve. Plus it's pretty nerve-wracking when you're having to do a surgery like this in a very far back area into somebody's jaw that then rapidly goes up. So this is tricky as a surgical placement. If this is a first time second molar case, that might be okay. I would say this is more of a moderate. Anybody doing anything in a second molar should have already kind of gone through a number of implants in other areas. But let's see what happens if we change this implant diameter, make it a little bit easier because your tool selection becomes a little broader. And let's see, let's go to, you could get away with a 5. Let's see if we did or a 6x8. Let's do a 6x8. So 6x8, not so great either if you're even as high as that. So that's a little bit risky there. What if we did a 5? Well, they show a 5x7. So maybe the compromise is a 6x7. And now I think this might be a little bit more doable, because this bone right here is hard cortical bone. When you graft this hard cortical bone will still be hard. It's not going to be soft really. So when you go in with your sinus drill bits, whatever you're doing, you can get a 4+ millimeter flat bottom here at the height that you want, and then you widen it with the ultra wide drills that Hyacinth has for maybe a 7 millimeter diameter or the 6 millimeter by 7, and then you just don't, you'll have like a stopping point here. But this is a very slow go. Don't put this at a high RPM, and you should be successful with that. Should grow really well, partly because our bone height is low here, but it's high here, which will hopefully maintain a lot of strong bone around that. The other thing I don't like so much is how top heavy this is. This is something that Bicon touts a lot, that get used to this. Like, look at the small implant here, but the giant tomato coming off the top. You know, that's how I see it. I see it as like a tomato on a stick when I look at Bicon type implants. Well, I guess they work. This patient also has a lot of dentistry here, so it's one of those things that I like to look at as well. And this case actually turned into doing veneers across the front and a lot of general dentistry. So as I kind of yield to this, she yielded more to wanting to do other work that we compromised on, kind of like, hey, let's do this, let's do that. So this was actually a fairly lengthy discussion about this case before starting it, but she's very clear on kind of my do's and don'ts and likes and not likes. So we took it one step at a time. You do the extraction, you do the graft, let her kind of decide in 4 months, 5 months, whether or not she wants to actually go through with the second molar implant. So that's how I treat that. They can schedule it in or not schedule it in. That's totally fine with me. Like I said, it gets to be a little tricky. The easy thing about making this actually a starter second molar case is because there's hard bone around the socket. So as you're doing the osteotomy, it's going to be hard to pierce through to get to that nerve. So when you hit that area of bone, you can actually feel it, and it's kind of self-guided because all the other bone from the graft and everything else that's growing in the site is going to be fairly soft. So that's all that is on this one. Simple one-tooth, single tooth replacement. We are looking at that one over there just to kind of cover our bases. But yeah, this is a generalized case. Obviously, we treat for the perio as well. And that's it. I'm signing off. So thanks for watching, and subscribe if you haven't already, and check us out on Facebook, and we are doing live broadcasts from time to time. So check us out on that. So cool.